A knock in the cold night. The wind howled through the trees, cold and sharp like knives. Snow fell thick outside Ethan's small wooden cabin, deep in the forest. He had built this home himself, quiet, simple, and far away from the busy world. Inside, a fire crackled. Ethan sat by it, reading an old book and sipping hot coffee. Suddenly, knock, knock. He froze. It was past midnight. No one came here. No one even knew this place existed. Knock, knock. This time the sound was softer, weaker, like someone barely had strength. Ethan stood up, heart beating faster. He grabbed his flashlight and walked to the door. Snowflakes drifted in the light as he slowly opened it. What he saw made him forget to breathe. A girl, not human, alien. She was small, thin, and covered in torn rags that were barely clothes. Her skin was pale purple, her long hair wet and tangled with ice. She had no shoes. Her feet were bleeding in the snow. She looked up at him with glowing, tired eyes. And then, she collapsed. Ethan dropped to his knees. Hey, can you hear me? He shouted, trying to shake her awake. She didn't respond. Her body was cold, too cold. Without thinking, he lifted her in his arms and carried her inside. He placed her near the fire, wrapped her in a thick blanket, and brought warm water. Her hands were icy and shaking. He checked her pulse. It was weak, but still there. Who was she? Where had she come from? He had never seen an alien up close before. Sure, the news said aliens lived on other planets, and some visited human spaceports. But this? A lone alien girl in a snowstorm knocking on his forgotten door, it made no sense. She stirred under the blanket. Her lips moved, whispering something in a language he didn't understand. Easy now, Ethan said softly. You're safe here. She looked at him, eyes wide with fear. She tried to sit up, but her body was too weak. She flinched when Ethan reached for her hand. It's okay, he said again, holding his hands up. I won't hurt you. Her breathing slowed. She watched the fire, eyes blinking fast as if trying to stay awake. Ethan walked to the kitchen and poured soup into a bowl. He brought it to her, kneeling beside her. Here, he said. You need this. She didn't move at first. Then, slowly, with shaking hands, she took the bowl. She drank like she hadn't eaten in days. Ethan watched quietly. She wasn't dangerous. She was scared and starving. When she finished the soup, she placed the bowl on the floor. Her eyes slowly closed, her head resting against the chair's leg. She was fast asleep. That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. He sat near her, watching her chest rise and fall. Questions filled his head. Why was she here? Was someone chasing her? Had she escaped something terrible? Her feet had deep cuts. Her arms had bruises. Her clothes were barely holding together. It was like she had been thrown away. He sighed, throwing another log into the fire. I don't know who you are, he whispered. But you found the right door. Morning came slowly, with gray light creeping through the frosted windows. Ethan cooked some eggs and bread. The girl was still asleep, curled up near the fire. She looked peaceful now, but Ethan saw the truth in her face, pain, fear, and exhaustion. When she woke, she jumped in fear, her hands ready to protect herself. Hey, Ethan said, raising his hands. It's just me. You're okay. She looked around, confused. Then her eyes found the food. She reached for it, then stopped, waiting for permission. Ethan nodded. Go ahead. She ate quickly again. Ethan noticed she still didn't speak. He tried to introduce himself. He pointed at himself and said, Ethan. She watched him. He repeated slower, Ethan. She tilted her head, then weakly said, Eitan. His eyes widened. Yes, that's me, Ethan. Then he pointed at her. You? She looked down, unsure. She hugged herself, eyes dropping. No name. he asked gently. She didn't answer. Ethan stood up and grabbed a notepad. He drew a stick figure of himself and wrote Ethan under it. Then he drew a stick girl with big eyes and pointed to her. She stared at it for a long time. Then, in a soft whisper, she said something, a word he didn't understand. He wrote it down. It looked like Liera. Liera, he repeated. Her eyes sparkled. She gave a tiny, tired nod. Okay, Liera, he said with a soft smile. You're safe here. You don't need to run anymore. But even as he said it, Ethan felt something strange deep inside. Like this was only the beginning. Something had driven her here, and whatever it was, it might come knocking next. Lyra sat curled near the fire, wrapped in Ethan's thick blanket. She did not speak. Her arms were hidden under the fabric, her body still shivering a little from the cold. Her large glowing eyes kept moving, watching everything. She did not blink often. Ethan sat across the room, not wanting to scare her. The room was quiet. Only the crackle of fire filled the space between them. She looked more like a lost child than anything else, though she clearly wasn't human. Ethan tried to offer her a smile, but she didn't return it. Her fingers were thin and trembling as she held a warm cup of soup he had just poured. She sipped slowly, almost like she wasn't used to eating calmly. He noticed how she jumped slightly when the wind outside hit the windows too hard. Something about the way she flinched told him she was used to loud sounds meaning danger. He watched her silently for a long time. She wouldn't meet his eyes. Her feet were now clean but badly wounded. Ethan had used a bit of warm water and a cloth earlier, and although she didn't stop him, she had gone stiff with fear the entire time. She hadn't said a word since last night. Not even her name again. Ethan stood up, walked to the other room, and returned with another blanket. This one was softer, made from old fabric his mother once gave him. He held it out to her gently, taking a slow step forward. It's softer, he said, keeping his voice calm. Lyra didn't move. He knelt down and placed the blanket a little distance from her. If you want it, it's yours. Her eyes studied him. No words, just silence. But after a long pause, she leaned forward slowly and took the second blanket. She wrapped it around herself, hiding her face for a moment. Ethan saw her body relax, just slightly. He sat down again and began sketching in his notepad, drawing little figures, shapes, simple things. A tree, a sun, a house. After a while, he felt eyes on him. He looked up and saw Lyra watching, curious, cautious, but watching. He smiled again and showed her the drawing. Home, he said, pointing at the sketch of the cabin. She tilted her head, staring at the shape. He drew a stick figure next to the house. Ethan, he said, pointing at it. Then he drew another figure, smaller, with big eyes like hers. He wrote Lyra underneath. She blinked and looked at the drawing, then at him. She touched the picture with one finger very gently, then pulled her hand back quickly like she wasn't sure if she was allowed. It's okay, he said softly. You can stay here. Her lips moved as if trying to form a word, but nothing came out. Then she lowered her eyes again, hiding her face in the blanket. Ethan could tell something was wrong inside her. She wasn't just tired or cold. She was kind of broken. Something had made her believe that speaking was dangerous. He got up, walked to the kitchen, and brought a small plate of bread and fruit. He placed it on the table near her. She didn't move. He walked back to his chair, giving her space. A few minutes passed. Then quietly, she leaned forward and picked up a piece of bread. She ate slowly, like she didn't trust the food not to disappear. Ethan felt something tighten in his chest. He had never been the kind of person who got involved in other people's problems. He lived alone for a reason. But now this strange, silent girl, this alien, was in his home, sitting by his fire, wrapped in his blankets, and something about her made him care. That night, as the snowstorm returned outside, Ethan made a small bed for her near the fire. Soft cushions, warm blankets, and an old pillow. She didn't fight him when he helped her lay down, but as he turned to leave, she suddenly grabbed his sleeve. He stopped. She looked up at him with wide eyes. No words. Just fear and something else. "Do you want me to stay?" he asked softly. She didn't nod, but she didn't let go either. So he sat near the fire again, this time without speaking. After some time, her hand slowly loosened its grip. Her eyes closed, and she fell asleep. Ethan watched her. The flames reflected in her pale face. Her breathing became steady, peaceful even. But she was still holding the blanket tight like it was the only thing protecting her. He didn't know who she was. He didn't know what had happened to her. But he knew one thing now: she had no one, and for some reason, she had come to him. The next morning, Youre woke up crying. Her body trembled and her small fists clutched the blanket tightly. She didn't scream. She didn't speak. But tears rolled silently down her cheeks as she sat up by the fire, her breathing heavy, like she had been running in her sleep. Ethan rushed from the kitchen when he saw her crouching beside her gently. "Youre." "Hey, it's okay," he said, voice low and calm. She didn't look at him. Her eyes were wide, lost in some memory far away. She kept shaking her head as if trying to erase something from her mind. Ethan didn't touch her. He just sat there waiting. After a few minutes, she began to calm down, but her face was still full of fear. Ethan handed her a warm cup of tea. She didn't take it at first, but after another moment, she accepted it with both hands. He noticed her wrists then, thin, bruised, and covered in faded marks. They weren't fresh, but they looked like they used to be. Chained. Something inside Ethan snapped quietly. He had guessed that she had suffered, but now he knew for sure. Someone had locked her up. Maybe worse. He stood up slowly and walked to the table. He pulled out the notepad and began drawing again, this time sketching a chain and a pair of locked hands. Then he showed it to her and pointed. Youre froze. She stared at the drawing, her fingers tightening on the cup. "Did someone do this to you?" he asked softly. She didn't answer, but her lips pressed into a hard line and her eyes watered again. She looked away. Ethan sighed. He didn't want to push her, but he had to understand what she had escaped from. And more importantly, if someone would come looking for her. He erased the chain drawing and replaced it with a stick figure holding a key. Then he drew a second figure in chains. The first figure opened the chains and set the second free. Next to the free figure, he wrote, "Safe. Free." Youre stared at it for a long time. She traced her finger over the free figure. Then, very quietly, she whispered something. The word sounded like "no car." Ethan blinked. "No car? Is that what they called you?" She nodded slowly. The word sounded alien, but somehow familiar. He wrote it down next to the chained figure. "Slave?" he asked carefully, testing her reaction. Her face flinched, her hands pulled back, but she didn't deny it. Ethan felt a cold anger rise inside him. Someone had treated her like a slave. She wasn't just lost. She had escaped something awful. He walked over to the shelf and pulled down an old box. Inside were small tools and scraps of metal, left over from the years he spent fixing broken machines. He brought the box over and showed her a few pieces. Then he pointed to the notepad again and drew a broken chain. She tilted her head, confused. He smiled gently and whispered, "Let's make sure you're never chained again." Youre didn't understand his words, but something in his face made her relax. He handed her a tiny metal ring. Not a real chain, just a toy piece. She held it, stared at it, then slowly bent it in half until it snapped. Ethan clapped softly. For the first time, Youre smiled. Small, tired, but real. That night, she sat beside the fire, closer to him than before. She didn't speak much. but she watched as he repaired a broken flashlight and seemed interested in every small tool he used. When he offered her a screwdriver, she hesitated, then took it and mimicked him. They didn't speak each other's language, but something unspoken was beginning to build between them. Later, as Ethan tucked her in with the soft blanket again, she whispered something unexpected. "Eitan." He looked at her, surprised. She said his name again, clearer this time. "Ethan." He smiled wide. "That's me." She pointed at herself. "Lyra." He nodded, voice soft. "Lyra." Then she said another word, one that made Ethan's heart stop. "Thank..." She struggled to finish it. "Thank you." Ethan felt a lump in his throat. She was trying. After everything, after the silence, after the chains, she was trying to connect. "You're welcome," he whispered, his voice cracking just a little. She smiled again, a little braver this time. But deep inside, Ethan knew something dark still lived in her past. Chained memories didn't just vanish overnight. She had found warmth, a bed, and someone who didn't see her as an object. But the people who had once owned her, who left those marks on her skin, were still out there. And maybe they wanted her back. 3 days passed. Lyra no longer shook when Ethan handed her food. She now sat near the table during breakfast, still quiet but calmer. She had learned a few human words. Warm, blanket, safe. Every time she said one, Ethan smiled and nodded, encouraging her. Her eyes were no longer filled with panic but something new. Something like hope. She no longer flinched when he entered the room. She even helped him sort metal tools, copying how he cleaned and arranged each piece. She liked the flashlight best. She would turn it on and off, laughing softly, as if the little beam of light was a kind of magic. For Ethan, hearing her laugh, even once, was worth everything. But on the 4th night, everything changed. It began with a strange hum. Faint, distant, but growing louder. Ethan was outside chopping firewood when he heard it. He looked up. The sky was dark, filled with slow-moving snow, but something unnatural glowed through the clouds. Lights. Moving lights. Not stars. Not aircraft. Something else. Ethan dropped the axe and ran back inside. "Lyra," he called. She was by the fire, playing with a screwdriver. When she saw his face, her smile faded. "They're here," he whispered, locking the door behind him. She didn't ask who. She knew. The humming grew louder. A deep vibration shook the windows. Lyra stood up, her body frozen. Ethan grabbed her hand and led her into the back room. He pulled open a trap door leading to the basement. "Hide here," he said. "Stay quiet." She shook her head, afraid to be alone. Ethan placed both hands on her shoulders. "I'll keep them out. You stay safe." She stared at him, then nodded. Slowly, she climbed down into the dark, cold space below. He closed the trap door, threw a rug over it, and turned off the lights. Then he waited. Seconds later, there was a knock. Not soft, not weak like hers had been, a heavy, loud knock that made the cabin walls shake. Ethan walked to the door but didn't open it. "Who's there?" he shouted. A cold voice answered, metallic and sharp. "We are looking for a unit. Female. Small. Escaped. She was seen on this planet. We traced her here." Ethan didn't answer. The voice continued. "We know you are inside. Human. This is not your concern. Give her to us." He kept his hand on the door, thinking fast. "There's no one here but me." A pause. Then the voice said, "Open, or we enter by force." Ethan slowly reached under the table and pressed a button on a hidden console. An old defense system he had set up years ago when he lived alone and feared thieves. It wouldn't kill anyone, but it would slow them down. Outside, something hissed. A strange sound of steam and metal grinding, and then, boom, they tried to break the door. The wooden cabin shook, but the old reinforced door held. The system activated. Red lights blinked on the porch. A loud alarm blared. Then silence. Ethan stood still, heart pounding. Then, the voice returned. "You protect a product that does not belong to you," he shouted back, anger rising in his throat. "She's not a product, she's a person." Another silence. Then the voice said one last thing before the sound of retreating steps faded into the night. "You have made an enemy. We will return." Ethan didn't move until the light in the sky disappeared completely. Only then did he open the trapdoor. Youre sat inside, hugging her knees. When she saw him, she stood quickly. "Gone?" she asked in a small voice. He nodded. "For now." She climbed out, her legs shaking. Ethan sat beside her and she leaned into him, burying her face in his shoulder. "They hurt many," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Not just me." Ethan closed his eyes. He didn't want to imagine what she had seen, what she had lived through. He put his arm around her and pulled her close. "You're safe with me," he said. But in his mind, he knew it was a lie. They had found her. They would return, and this time, they wouldn't knock so gently. But Ethan wasn't going to give her up, not now, not ever. Whatever they were, whoever had once called her a slave, they would have to go through him first. The fire had gone cold by morning, but neither of them had slept. Youre sat near the window, eyes empty, her knees pulled to her chest. She hadn't touched her breakfast. Ethan noticed her fingers trembling again, the way they used to when she first arrived. All the peace they had built in the last few days had shattered the moment those aliens knocked on his door. Ethan made tea and placed a cup beside her. She didn't look at it. She didn't look at him. She just stared outside, watching the snow fall like it was swallowing the world. He finally broke the silence. "Youre, you're not safe out there. If they find you again..." Her voice was soft, shaking. "I can go." Ethan turned toward her, confused. "What?" She looked at him, eyes wet. I can go if I'm a problem." The words hit him harder than any weapon could. He stepped forward, kneeling beside her, trying to meet her eyes. "Youre, you are not a problem. You're not the reason this happened. They are." She hugged her knees tighter. "They hurt anyone who helps. They will hurt you too. I don't want that." Ethan sat down beside her, voice calm. "You think I'm afraid of them?" Youre didn't answer. He smiled gently. "Well, maybe I am. But that doesn't mean I'll let you walk out into the snow and disappear." She looked down. "I was always told I don't belong anywhere, that no one would want a broken thing." Ethan frowned. "You're not broken, Youre. You're healing. And that's different." She didn't believe him. He could see it in her face. The years of abuse, of being treated like property, had buried her self-worth deep beneath shame and fear. Ethan stood up and walked over to his cabinet. He pulled out a wooden box, old and scratched but still strong. Inside it were things from his past. Photos, small carvings, a folded flag from his time in service. He brought it to her and sat beside her again. "Let me show you something," he said. He opened the box and took out a small wooden star. "My father made this for me when I was a kid. I dropped it once, cracked the edge. I thought it was ruined." Youre watched quietly, but my dad said, "Don't throw it away. Fix it, it still shines." He handed it to her. "See this part here? I glued it back. It's not perfect, but it's still mine." She held the wooden star carefully, tracing the crack with her finger. Ethan leaned closer. "You've been hurt, Youre, but that doesn't make you any less worthy of care or love." Her lips parted slightly as if those words didn't make sense in her world. "I don't want you to go," Ethan said. "I want you to stay. You're not a guest. You're family now." Her breath caught. She looked down and her tears fell onto the wooden star. "But I can't give anything back." Ethan chuckled softly. "You already have. You gave this quiet old cabin life again. You made it feel full." For a long moment she didn't move. Then slowly she leaned her head on his shoulder. I don't know how to be part of something, she whispered. You'll learn, he replied gently. One step at a time. They sat in silence, the only sound being the soft wind brushing against the windows. Later, Ethan made lunch, and this time Youre ate with him, sitting at the table, not in the corner. She even smiled when he joked about burning the soup. But peace never lasted long. That night, Ethan stood at the door, double-checking the locks. He had added a makeshift barrier using furniture, just in case. Youre stood behind him, watching his every move. They will come back, she said quietly. I know, Ethan replied. You can still give me to them, she added. It would end this. Ethan turned quickly. Youre, listen to me. I will never give you to them. Not for peace, not for safety, not for anything. She looked at him. Something shifting in her eyes, something brave. You really mean that? He nodded without hesitation. You knock on my door that night for a reason. You don't have to keep running anymore. A tear rolled down her cheek, but this time she didn't wipe it away. She whispered, Then I stay. He smiled. Good. Because this house is not a home without you now. That night, Youre slept in a proper bed for the first time. Ethan gave her his room and slept on the couch. She didn't protest, but just before she lay down, she touched the wooden star and placed it by her pillow, and for the first time since arriving, she slept without fear. Ethan sat on the porch, quietly watching the snow melt under the morning sun. Days had passed since the night those creatures came. He hadn't seen their lights again, but the memory stayed sharp. Youre hadn't mentioned them since. She spoke a little more now. Her words were still broken, her voice soft, but she tried. Every time she spoke, it was like a fragile step into a world she'd never been allowed to live in. Inside the cabin, Youre stood at the mirror. She touched her reflection gently as if she wasn't sure she belonged in the image. Her skin was no longer pale with cold. Her face had color now. Her bruises had faded. She wore Ethan's oversized clothes, rolled up to fit her. She didn't look like the creature who had knocked on his door that night. She looked like someone trying to be whole again. That day, something changed. Ethan was sorting old supplies when he found a music player. It was scratched and dusty but still worked. He handed it to Youre with a small smile. It plays music. Want to hear? She nodded curiously. He played a soft tune, gentle, peaceful. Her eyes widened as the melody filled the room. Her fingers touched the speaker, her mouth slightly open in wonder. Pretty, she whispered. Ethan chuckled. Yeah. Pretty. Then she said something new. We had music before. He looked up. You did? She nodded slowly. Long ago. Before I was taken. Ethan set the player down and sat across from her. Do you want to tell me? She hesitated. Her fingers twisted the hem of her sleeve. She looked down for a long time. My name is not Youre, she said finally. Ethan blinked. It's not? She shook her head. Youre was name they gave me when I was sold. His chest tightened. Then what's your real name? She paused. Then she said something soft. A name full of vowels and strange sounds. Ethan couldn't repeat it perfectly. She smiled sadly. You can still say Youre. It's okay. No, Ethan said firmly. If that name was given by people who hurt you, then it's not who you are. You tell me what to call you and I will. She was quiet for a moment. My real name means quiet light in my people's tongue. Ethan smiled. Then that's who you are. Quiet light. You don't have to carry their names anymore. Her eyes watered. They erased my name, my clothes, my hair, everything. Said I was nothing. Ethan leaned forward. But they were wrong. She wiped a tear away, whispering, I believed them. I thought, if no one remembers me, then maybe I don't exist. He shook his head. You exist, you're here, you survived. Then she rolled up her sleeve and showed him something he hadn't seen before. A faint scar near her shoulder. A burn mark. Not natural. They branded me, she said. Told me I was owned. Ethan felt heat rise in his chest. He wanted to find whoever had done that and make them feel what she had felt. But he stayed calm. You're not owned, he said. You're free. That scar doesn't define you. She nodded slowly. Then for the first time she reached forward and held his hand. I'm scared, she admitted. So am I, Ethan said honestly. But we don't have to be scared alone. They sat like that for a while, her small, delicate fingers curled around his calloused hand. Two people from different worlds, but both carrying wounds. Later, Ethan brought her an old box with hair ties and a small mirror. Want me to help with your hair? She smiled shyly. Yes, please. He gently brushed it out. It was long, tangled, and soft like silk. As he worked, she told him more. About her planet. About the way stars looked from her home. About how she used to sing to her younger sister, who was taken first and never returned. I haven't sung since, she said quietly. Ethan didn't press her. He just listened. That night, when the fire crackled and the wind howled softly outside, she surprised him. She sang, a quiet, haunting melody in a language he didn't know. But he understood the feeling. It was sorrow. It was memory. It was survival. And, in that moment, Ethan realized something. She wasn't just healing. She was remembering who she truly was. Snow fell gently outside, dusting the trees and rooftops in soft white. The cabin was quiet, warm, peaceful. Inside, a fire burned steady. And Liera, no, her true name, the one she had whispered just days ago, sat near the window. She no longer curled up in fear. She no longer flinched at every sound. Her hands were steady now, busy sewing a patch onto a wool blanket. Ethan had taught her the basics, and she picked it up fast. Her stitches weren't perfect, but they were strong. Ethan watched her from the kitchen. He made tea, 1 cup for himself and 1 for her, just the way she liked it. She smiled when he brought it over, accepting it with both hands like a sacred gift. Her eyes, once filled with shadows, now held something new. Light. The same quiet light her real name meant. They hadn't spoken of the alien since that night, but both of them knew it wasn't over. Somewhere out there, the ones who had branded her, chained her, and stripped her identity were still searching, still watching. But here, in this cabin, she was no longer prey. She was a person, and Ethan treated her as such, gently, respectfully, as someone worth everything. She looked up from her sewing. You built this house yourself? Ethan nodded. Took a few years, piece by piece. It was just me back then. She looked around, smiling faintly. Now not just you. He smiled too. No, now it's a home. Later that day, they walked together in the snow. Liera wore a thick coat Ethan had adjusted for her size. It still hung loose on her shoulders, but she didn't care. She lifted her head to the sky, eyes closed, letting snowflakes fall on her face. For a second, she looked like someone who had never known pain. Do you ever miss the cities? She asked quietly. Ethan shrugged. Too loud. Too fast. Here, I can breathe. She nodded. I think I can breathe here too. But peace, as always, was fragile. That night the power flickered. Not from weather, something else. Ethan's instincts kicked in instantly. He grabbed his scanner, a basic but useful device that could pick up nearby signals. A red light blinked. Something was approaching. He turned to Liera. Basement, now. She didn't ask questions. She followed him without hesitation. He hid her beneath the trapdoor again, just like before. But this time, she didn't cry. She didn't shake. She simply looked at him and said, Don't let them take me. Ethan placed a hand on her cheek. They won't. Not while I'm alive. He shut the door and covered it. Then he waited. The knock came minutes later, hard, sharp, demanding. He opened it this time. Outside stood 3 figures, tall, armored, alien. The leader stepped forward. "Return the asset, final warning." Ethan didn't move. "She's not an asset, she's not yours." "She is government property," the alien replied. "You are harboring a stolen life form." "No," Ethan growled. "I'm protecting a person." The alien raised its weapon. "This is not your battle, human." "She knocked on my door," Ethan said. "That made it my battle." Before they could speak again, a quiet voice came from behind. "I'm not hiding anymore." Youre stepped into view. Ethan spun around. "Youre, no." She held up a hand. "It's okay." She walked past Ethan and stood in front of the aliens. Snow fell around her like a curtain of light. "I am not your property," she said. "You erased my name, but I remembered it. You took my freedom, but I found it again, and I will never go back." The aliens stood still. One reached forward. Ethan grabbed his tool blaster from his belt and aimed. "Touch her and I swear." But the alien paused. Something changed. It lowered its weapon. "Very well," it said. "If she speaks for herself, the law allows self-declaration." It stared at Youre. "But your name is struck from record. You have no place." Youre stood tall. "Then I'll make one. Here." The aliens turned without another word and vanished into the dark, their ship lifting into the sky. Silence returned. Ethan stood there, stunned. "You didn't have to come." "Out mine I did," she said. "This time I wanted to choose." Back inside the cabin, he poured her tea with shaking hands. She sat beside him, calm, peaceful, free. He looked at her. "You still want to stay?" She smiled. The same quiet, glowing smile that had melted ice from his heart. "You said something, once," she whispered, "that this wasn't just a house." He nodded. She reached for his hand. "Then let me stay forever inside." He didn't answer with words. He only squeezed her hand and never let go.